In the opening scene, we hear the narration of June, who reveals that she had always known what she wanted. We see a young June who is giggling as her father, John, happily reveals that he had to pay her mom over $3 million to have sole custody of her after the divorce. Little June is happy that they would have family time and play with airplanes. However, she later realized that he only divorced her mom because he was so engrossed with work that he barely had any time for her. That was her reality, even till she grew up. Her father never changed. His work was like a mistress that one can never divorce. She thought the huge price he paid to get sole custody was because he loved her. But now it is glaring to her that it's because he was a bad negotiator. Her life is not the way she wants it, and nothing she does around him matters. She is sure that when she gets her diploma, her dad will just stick her in a corner office with a huge salary in one of his dozen companies. As she walks along the road, a glider falls beside the road. Just as she picks it up, the owner, a guy named Declan, comes for it. She mentions the name of the glider, which is one of the old Wright brothers box gliders, which used to be called Angle of Incidence, but it is now called Angle of Attack. Declan, whose patience is wearing out, finishes her sentence and pleads that she give it back. Still, she goes into the technicalities of the airplane, explaining what is wrong with it. But the guy pleads that she give it back because it is due in 2 minutes. When she insists on helping him tweak it a bit, he reveals that it has covered the intended distance, and he doesn't care how far it can go, because it's just a grade. She sees it as an airplane that could be made perfect, but he sees it as a project that he needs to pass. Two different perspectives. He loses his patience when she is hesitant and tells her to stop acting like a child who needs to take a toy to daddy because his grade will be affected. A little bit hurt by what he said, she tweaked a side of the wing and threw it in the air, while sarcastically telling him to go get it because it's due. Unfortunately, before he can get to it, the plane hits an elderly woman on the forehead. The guy is beyond terrified because that is his lecturer, and she picks the plane up, confirming if it is his. Surprisingly, she scores him an A. He can't believe the turn of events as his lecturer walks up. In the next scene, Declan shows up to meet June, and she can't help but liken him to a car problem that just keeps turning up. They never get along and are always arguing. Finally, it's graduation, and coincidentally, they are seated beside each other. Declan is surprised she studied business major. Knowing she is fond of airplanes, he would have thought she would study aeronautics and be a valedictorian, or at least with honors. He believes she is too smart to have studied business. She wonders if that is his way of complimenting her. He finally agrees that she is super smart, and he never imagined it would be for business. She wonders why she has to meet his expectations, and this makes him wonder whose expectations she is meeting. He believes that if it isn't her own, then it's not worth it. Not willing to hear any more of his attacks on her, she accuses him of having sleepless nights over future unemployment. Then she makes a joke about him for majoring in broadcast with honors in the age of streaming online. However, he reveals that he at least has an actual plan and has sent out resumes, but she boasts of already having a job. Not wanting to lose in their little argument session, hopefully, tells her that wherever he may be, he will be flying while she will just be coasting. This really hit a nerve in her. Outside the graduation hall, she is deep in thought. Then she concludes with her next line of action after seeing an airplane. At home, she calls her dad to reveal that she quit. He refuses to accept it, so he thinks it is about money and promises to add more zeros to her allowances. But she tells him that it's not. This makes him think that her mom is influencing her, but she clarifies that her mom hasn't given her anything other than postcards in the last 15 years, which he is aware of. He even offers her a private jet, but she lets him know that she doesn't want anything from him. She reveals that she simply wants to fly instead of coasting. It appears the words of Declan have gotten to her. Her dad reluctantly agrees, and she reveals that she got another job for them at a mid-sized investment place, where she will be doing client outreach. In the next scene, June resumes work only to be met with a shocker. As she opens the door, John, her dad, and the owner are shaking happily. The owner of the company reveals that he just sold the company, and John happily announces that she is getting a big promotion. Immediately, she announces her resignation and storms out. She proceeds to call other job openings. However, when she gets there, she sees a notice that her father has bought the company. This happens to all the jobs she applies for. She gets frustrated. Back at home, while she tries watching the TV, she receives a call from her dad, and she vents her frustration. They argue back and forth, and she promises to get a job at all costs, even though he seems certain that she would never be able to find out that he won't buy. In the middle of their argument, She hears an advertisement on the TV where the anchor proudly proclaims that they can never be bought and nobody owns them because they only answer to viewers. He mentions that they have been the city's only public television station since 1969. It appears she finally has the answer to outsmart her dad. So, back to their argument. She boasts of finding a job that can't be bought. In the next scene, she arrives at the television station, but she sees it locked. She calls out severally around the building, but there is no answer. She finally sees someone at the back, who is digging into the trash. The lady, Claire, lets her in. However, she has an issue with not having an appointment. When she threatened to let her superiors know about what she was doing with the trash, Claire reveals that she is in charge and shouldn't be threatened. While they are discussing, she overhears Declan trying to convince a man, Carrie Leach, about a deal. Carrie is a show host at their TV station who likes to hear an argument before giving the company his pledge. She immediately leaves Claire attending to her and heads their way, while ignoring her call. On entering, she immediately starts mocking Declan that he can't still close a deal. Then, she starts telling facts about the station which makes Carrie impressed. Before leaving, he writes a check, and instead of giving Declan, he hands it over to June. When he leaves, Declan asks Claire what June is doing there, and she reveals that she is there for an interview. However, he is her reference. This makes Declan reveal that June doesn't know anything about working in broadcast. Claire reminds him that she also learned on the job. In the end, he agrees that she is smart and Claire announces that she can work with that. Then she collects the pledge from June and hires her. When she leaves, he laughs at her for coming to work at his workplace. Then, she reminds him that Carrie mentioned that there is a show. He invites her to work with him, as the newbie. However, the show leaves her with a headache. She is not pleased that he is unwilling to make donations willingly. When they walk out, she complains about it to Declan. He tells her what they have going currently, unless she knows someone with some big pockets. However, she quickly denies it, not wanting her dad to interfere. June gets to work. She goes to the library to learn more. Armed with new knowledge, she goes to meet Declan and proudly gives her fact-based input. Unfortunately, he makes her realize that none of what she said makes sense because she is trying to learn about modern electronics in a printed volume. He lets her know that their work is a specialized craft that he spent 4 years learning in college. So he thinks she is going to cram it all in overnight and is not going to work. So he begins to teach her all she is to know in each department of the TV station. And they have fun while at it. It's as if they never had any issues from the get-go. In their next shoot, Declan is surprised by the camera movement suggestion she is making. They argue about it in front of the host, Claire, and the crew. Meanwhile, John is having a hard time finding where his daughter is working. He acknowledges that anyone would be a fool not to hire her. Then he sees Carrie on his show and takes a keen interest in him. As if on cue, the host thanks his crew, Claire, Declan, and June, the latest addition to the team. Right there is the answer June's dad has been searching for. In the next scene, John calls the TV station which Claire picks up. Then he rudely demands that she get him the man in charge. When he mentions his name, she is shocked. Nevertheless, she goes to inform June, who is sad that he now knows where she is working. When she reveals that he is her dad, both Claire and Declan are dumbfounded. Claire reveals that if her dad makes one pledge, all their problems will go away. But June reveals that he is calling to buy their station and not to pledge. Declan reminds her that it can't happen. However, Claire says though he can't buy the station, he can however push for a few things in exchange for a large pledge. But June thinks there's no point being nice to him, with the hopes of getting him to pledge because he would want to know everything. When Claire gets back to her desk, she resumes her call with John and pretends to be the answering machine, asking him to state the name of the person he wishes to call. She jokes with him for a while before hanging up. He gets so frustrated. In the scene, he shows up at their office and is still arrogant as ever, threatening Claire to show her face. She does not buzz him in, and just then, Carrie approaches the door, talks sweetly to Claire, and she unlocks the door for him. John wants to rush in with him, but he stops him. He threatens to deal with him after he has signed the document with him, but Carrie signs his autograph on it instead. This frustrates him as he is left outside. Inside, Carrie and Claire watch as Declan and June argue about work. Later, the two of them and Claire sit tired after the show. June complains about Carrie always making up facts in his show and wonders if the show had always been like that. Declan reveals that it wasn't always like that, but things changed overnight before he got there. Claire leads them to their old program room storage. She shows them a yearly show they used to make named Christmas Spectacular. With just that single show, They were able to get enough pledges for the next 12 months. They used to make local histories, documentaries, and all the stuff that made sense. But it stopped when the board decided to go edgy because they thought the fancy concerts cost them much more. So they cut down expenses so much that it affected them till they were doing next to nothing. The sad thing is that the board bailed on them once they realized that things had gone south, and no one volunteered to replace them. An inspired June urges them to do one of the concerts again, but Claire reveals that it takes so much to stage a show like that. Declan explains the details of all that they need. Plus, they always had a star to host the show. Someone like the mayor or some big news anchor, but they can't think of anyone who will be willing to help them out, especially since Christmas is near. June suggests they don't the following year, but Claire reveals they wouldn't be next year because they have to pay a mortgage for the place. So they either come up with a solution by the new year, or they go dark for the first time in 5 years. So she tells them that if they want to still be employed, they should get June's dad to pledge. When she leaves, Declan still can't believe they have until New Year, but June has an idea. The next day, John comes to the station with flowers for Claire, but she turns him away. He keeps bringing gifts till Carrie meets him there again, and when he tries to get in, John falls. Claire has to vote outside and shoo him away because it's not even 9 o'clock. In the next scene, Declan and June meet up to solicit for pledge from Carrie once again, through the way he likes arguing. She begins by attacking the fact that he wants to do things the old way and thinks that he has to consider the age group of the show. He mentions that some families like his still watch shows together, not minding what it is. This is where he reveals that his dad passed away in an accident when he was 4, and still his ashes on the mantelpiece also watches with them. This shocks June, and she goes mute for a while before arguing that not all families are like his. For some, their mom leaves and never comes back, so she wonders what show is for people like that. Declan mentions that her dad stays around, but she reveals that he never has time for her. This goes on for a while before he pauses mid-sentence. She urges him to say what he wants to say, and he reluctantly mentions that he can see why she is like this all the time. This shocks her, and she goes off on him. She reveals that she was 7 when her mom walked out on her, and her father only cared about work. She was not seen as important to him. He simply focused on work. The worst part is that he paid to keep her, so it made her feel indebted to him. Mr. Leach is highly impressed with their argument and thinks they deserve more than the check he used to give to them. So he mentions that he would go and talk to some people to get more pledges for them. We see John at it again. This time he is with a car. As he turns around, he sees Mr. Leach asking June to give him a few days to get the pledge for them. He sees that his daughter looks sad, but doesn't know why. When she goes back in, Declan apologizes for all that he said during the argument, but she tells him not to worry about it. She is simply happy that they are a step ahead in their plan. Back outside, John enters Mr. Leach's car. Thinking he made a mistake, Mr. Leach tells him that his Uber is elsewhere. But John goes off at him and warns him never to make his little girl cry again. Later, he calls June, who is at the station, to inform her of what he has done, thinking she would be pleased, but she gets really angry. When he mentions that she should be grateful, she spills her mind on how he had neglected her over the years because work was more important to him. Her words get at him, and he pleads that she let him do something to help, but she tells him it's too late. He sadly ends the call. Claire mentions that they now know why Carrie abandoned them. Declan doesn't want them to keep thinking about the sad turn of events, so they head out to a diner. After eating, they feel better, and Declan reveals that it's a special place because his mom used to bring him there. June suddenly tells Claire that they need to do the Christmas concert, but Claire reminds her that it is only achievable if they have the means to make it a reality. June is so optimistic that she decides to find an awesome musician for the show. In the next scene, she begins her search for the star of the show by calling different people, but they give her a hard time while at it. At the end of the calls, she reveals to Declan that they simply need to get 500 PS5s and a Louis Valois violin on a pike. Meanwhile, he has managed to come up with a likely venue for the show. They head to the venue, which is a large church, and June is overly excited about the place. When they meet with the nun in charge of the venue, they realize that they are required to pay the standard rate as others, and it is highly unattainable for them. All they are offering is exposure, which the venue already has. However, the only thing that could change her mind is if they bring Carrie Leach to the place. It appears that she really adores him, and even has the video cassette of his old movies. Seeing the turn of events, June proudly announces that Carrie is the event's host, and this gets her attention. Outside, Declan can't believe she just lied to a church, but she argues that it is not a lie yet. since they have a chance of getting him back, but he reminds her that they don't know his whereabouts. They do not have his address because all correspondence goes to his lawyer. So they head to his lawyer's address and are surprised to discover that the lawyer works out of an apartment. However, when they knock, the lawyer happened to be Carrie. He hurriedly drags them in and wonders how they found him, after trying to be anonymous for years. Seeing the state of his apartment, Declan realizes that there never was a big check coming from him. Carrie also reveals that he knew their fighting was staged, but he simply admired their performance. The income from his show has drastically reduced over time, so he reveals that he has nothing to give them. June reveals that he can still host the Christmas concert, but he rejects the offer after remembering the incident with June's father. As a matter of fact, he was about to leave the town to somewhere else. June sees a hat on a stool, and she gets an idea. She says the line from the movie she watched at the church, and this gets him into character. He begins to act it out. In one of the acts, he runs out to go after a character like it was in the movie. Meanwhile, John arrives at the TV station again, and this time as a changed man. He meets Claire and speaks politely to her, such that she can barely believe he is the one. He invites her to dinner and reveals that he knows it's only her and the young ones who are running the place. And before them, it was mostly her. Suddenly, Carrie appears behind John, calling him the accomplice and hooking him to the wall. He is shocked as Carrie recites his lines before heading in. June and Declan also head inside. Once inside, Carrie is pumped for action, but June tells him that he has to go see a nun before they can plan further. In the next scene, the plans have started coming together. June discusses with the bishop of the church and assures him that they will do everything to control the crowd. Seeing Declan behind her, she accuses him of doing nothing when the concert is the next day. However, he asks her what else is there to do. He urges her to take time to relax and not be anxious about the big event that she has just put together. Since she has no idea where she can go, he takes her to the skating rink. Afterward, they take a walk around and see her dad and Claire in a restaurant. June can't help but laugh, seeing that her father can be soft too. Later, when they sit, Declan wonders if what she saw doesn't bother her because he was never really that friendly with her. However, she reveals that she is not bothered, but she won't be getting friendly with him anytime soon. He also wonders if Claire is just leading him on to get the pledge out of him. But she dismisses his assumption because she knows her dad always gets something in return for his money. He wondered if he ever paid and did not get something in return. This makes her reveal that he paid $3 million to get sole custody of her. However, all he gets is disappointment, distraction, annoyance, and the like. Declan assures her that she is none of those because she is amazing and worth much more than that. He wouldn't even pay that much for just 10 days with her. This gets her into her feelings, and just as she is about to kiss him, he brings up an excuse to avoid it. Finally, the day of the concert arrives. June and Declan get busy. Claire informs her that there is a complaint about the electrical cable overheating, but she ignores it. June takes some fan emails to Carrie to get them signed. She is exhausted with all the planning, which makes Carrie ask what she would be doing if not the TV station concert. When she mentions a quiet night before Christmas Eve, he thinks she would be happy if she is prevented from doing what she is doing. However, when June is counting down to when they are going live, Declan gets called about the malfunctioning of the electrical cables. Before the end of the countdown, June sees Carrie's phone beside the cable, and she runs towards it shouting. But before she gets there, everything sparks, and there is a blackout. In the dark church, Carrie uses a lighter to search for people around, and he runs into June, who is mad that he had to plug in his phone near the cable. She throws down his phone in great annoyance. Declan and Claire join them. Claire asks them to think of something because she doesn't want that to be the last thing the station ever does. They get to work on it. They film outside with Carrie, apologizing to the viewers for the disappointment. He urges them to consider donating on the website to avoid that being their last broadcast for 47 years. He gets emotional as he appreciates the viewers' support over the years. As he sings, they all get emotional. In the next scene, as they pack up to leave, June calls her dad, who is sleeping at home. She tells him that he had won, and he can do what he does best, which is to sign the check, and she will be at his desk working for him the next day. He gets confused, and she reveals that the TV station is still taking pledges, but he still seems confused. She asks him to make a big pledge on the network's website. He doesn't think that's what she wants, but she gets angry because he had never thought nor cared about what she wants. Left with no choice, he promises to get the accountant to pledge, and they wish each other a Merry Christmas. As she ends the call and turns around, she meets Declan right behind her. He doesn't think she had to resort to begging her dad, but she reminds him that it was her only choice. He reminds her that this is what she had always complained about, and now that things get tough, instead of seeking out another solution, she has gone crawling back to her father. He believes that if she has faith in the team, then she should stick around till they find a solution. But she is adamant on leaving, and she leaves him right there. When she drives off, Declan informs Claire that they will be shutting the servers down themselves. When they get to the studio, he puts her through to how she would handle things. Then she calls his attention to their website blowing up. Pledges are coming in huge numbers. They are so happy about how things turn around because they are saved. In the next scene, an unmotivated June resumes work at her father's company. She hears a noise outside her window and sees a miniature plane with a written sign that she should check her phone. She calls Declan, and he happily tells her that they have more than enough pledges, and they don't need her father's money anymore. The whole city has come to their aid, all because of her hope and tireless work to save the station. She even thought of saying a proper goodbye to the viewers after their concert turned out to be a disaster. June is so excited by the news that she happily runs downstairs and kisses Declan. Her father meets them there waving, but she informs him that they won't be needing it, and they run off. A confused John calls Claire to know what has happened, and he is surprised to her that they have been saved. In the next scene, Carrie pitches his idea to Claire, but she informs him that they are not yet at that level. She thinks Declan tells him when he enters with June. After the men leave to discuss redesigning the place, Claire informs June that nobody bothered to clean out her desk after she left. They hear cars honking outside, and when they look out, John stands in the middle of the road, happily waving a placard that his daughter saved the day. In the next scene, June and Declan sit after a wonderful Christmas party. He thanks her for what they have been through to achieve and how she saved the day. Then, they seal their success and bright future with a kiss.